GEEK HARD presents Back Issue Bloodbath with your hosts, Andrew Young and Petula Neal.
Earth is but a twinkling dot, a paltry pebble in the vastness of space that is Back Issue Bloodbath. I'm Andrew Young.
I'm Petula Neal.
And this week, it is the first episode of a sub-series that we're doing on the show called My Favorite Comic, where we bring on a special guest who loves comics, and we talk about their favorite comic. It's a pretty simple concept. I think it was in the name. Pretty much. Well, today we have a very special guest, a guy he's an actor, he's a writer, he's an entrepreneur, and he's probably one of the biggest comic fans I know, an avid collector who has a very, very soft spot in his heart, very big soft spot in his heart for a character we're going to be talking about today. Please welcome to the program, Tim Rozon.
Yeah, that was quite the intro. I don't know if I can live up to it, but thanks.
I think you'll do just great, Tim. Now, it's funny, when we decided that we were going to do this sub-series, the first person that came to mind for me was you, because every time we talk, we always end up talking about comics. Yeah. In fact, everybody who you talk to, whether they want to or not, ends up talking about comics. So I was like, I want to have him come on the show. And I thought in my head, it's like, well, there's two books I know he's going to suggest. And sure enough, those are the two books you suggested.
Wow.
But the first we've covered already on the show, and that is Lazarus, which is a great comic. You can check it out in our archives. Of course, Greg Rucka and Michael Lark, some fantastic stuff. But then the other choice was the Galactus Trilogy of Fantastic Four 48 to 50 from 1966, created by Stan and Jack, and it is the first appearance of the Silver Surfer and Galactus. Now, before we get into the actual story, let's talk about the Silver Surfer a bit. What is it about the Surfer that you've always been drawn to?
The vulnerability of that character as a superhero. He was just so vulnerable. I was first actually not in comic book form introduced to the Silver Surfer. It was that amazing cartoon. I don't know if anybody watched in the late 80s, early 90s, which they did an amazing job of doing Galactus and everything of the Silver Surfer. And it was pretty much based on the first 18 issues of the Silver Surfer. They gave like an incredible, they really did his backstory justice, and they went into the Kree and the war. And like, I'm sure other people were like, there's too much going on here, but I was all in from the beginning. And just this lonely guy wandering the galaxy on a surfboard, flying through the galaxy. He was just the coolest.
Oh, totally. Yeah. The 1997 cartoon, part of the, basically when X-Men finished up on Fox Kids.
That's what it was.
That's how I got into X-Men, the animated X-Men.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
That was also a great show.
No, totally. Well, that was during a time, not to go off on a crazy tangent, but that was actually Marvel's first outside of comics universe. Before the cinematic universe, there was the cartoon universe from the 90s, because the X-Men, Spider-Man, the Silver Surfer, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, all of those cartoons lived like they had the same continuity, because they'd actually appear in each other's shows and stuff. But that was some good times. But it's kind of interesting, though, that you bring up the surfboard, because the surfboard is basically a sign of Kirby's ability to tap into what was popular at the times. Because, of course, Kirby just dropped this character in. This wasn't part of the original plot that him and Stan and Jack came up with. He went away, he drew the comic, brought it back, and Stan was like, and then he puts this guy with a surfboard in. What the hell? And, of course, he would say something very simple like, well, I didn't want to draw any more spaceships. But he had a habit of picking up what was popular at the time. And, the mid-'60s, the Beach Boys were killing the airwaves with a million songs about surfing. So he was kind of tapping into the pop culture of the times.
Very smart.
Yeah.
I mean, it just ended up being wicked cool that you're flying through the galaxy on a surfboard.
Yeah.
Definitely cool. Nothing against the Beach Boys. They got some boogie jammers, but yeah.
These 3 issues, though, they're considered as like the first big epic of the Fantastic Four story, because a little backstory, a little history. Just before these stories started to come out, Martin Goodman had decided that he wanted to start expanding the comic book universe. So he was always encouraging Stan to put more superhero type characters into the Fantastic Four comic, with the plan that he'd eventually get licenses to put out more comics through National, which was their distributor. And, then they'd just be ready made and you'd be able to just pop them into their own books. And so, of course, during this time, you get the Inhumans make their first appearance, which happens just before this story. You get the Black Panther, who shows up just after. And then you've got Silver Surfer in this. So there's a lot of characters getting, pumped out in Fantastic Four. So it's a very epic time. And Kirby has changed his art style up a bit at this point. And Joe Sinnott has been brought on as an inker, who people have considered that once Sinnott started inking Kirby, his artistic abilities, drew even higher. So yeah, so a lot of big moments happening for the Fantastic Four at this time. And so this is actually like a book that's been considered one of the greatest comic book stories of all time. I think recently it was even voted as like one of the top 5. So when did you first pick up issue 48?
It was obviously much later. I mean, when my peak comic book time was Secret Wars, Infinity Gauntlet, like those books. First Secret Wars was like just too much to comprehend. And then Infinity Gauntlet later was like my all-time favorite. Those graphic novels were just, when you put everything together. And I'm bringing those books up because without 48, 49, 50, I don't know if we'd have those stories. I feel like that was the start of really creating the Marvel universe and just these groups of getting, people together, which I think is kind of amazing that you kind of owe it back to that. So that was one of those things where I'm just, talking comics at the comic book shop. They're always like, oh, did you read the Galactus Trilogy? And then I was like, what's the trilogy? You know what I mean? Because I knew his backstory, and that was all about Zen La, and and so it was like, I don't know any of that. And so I was like, oh, all right. So I was very lucky that I had an uncle that had some old books that I got books. So I have those copies right there, 48, 49, 50 on my wall. They were from him. I mean, they're, I don't know, grade wise, they're good. To me, they're diamonds. You know what I mean? They're 9.8s across the board. I don't care. So I was able to actually read the original copies of those books then. So very lucky.
That's fantastic. Petula, was this the first time that you've gotten to read this story?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And reading it, it felt like, oh, for sure, this explains everything they're doing now, even up to like the TV shows. And then also, me, I always tangent into imagining how they would film it. So I went down a rabbit hole of like rewatching a trailer from a movie I saw at TIFF a few years back, Storm Surfers 3D. And I'm like, that's how they should, if they ever did him live action animated. Because it's like these two crazy like guys, I think they're Australian or New Zealanders, and I know they get very upset when you get them confused. Sorry. But they go out into the ocean, into like the roughest water, and like surf these waves that it's like very like Bodhi at the end of Point Break, the real Point Break, not Fast and Furious, not the other Point Break that we don't talk about. Yeah. But yeah, it's I started watching that whole movie last night after rereading these, because it just made me think about when Galactus is kind of like throwing shade to his herald and saying like, I gave you power to like surf through the galaxy, and this is how you do me. So yeah, I really want to see this in live action now, but I don't know how they'll do it.
Yeah, no, well, they got to do it better than 2005. That's all I got to say.
Well, I love Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne's voice, and it was who was the actual actor who was doing the physical work? Oh, the guy who was the fish guy in the Hellboy movies. what's his name?
Doug Jones?
Yeah, Doug Jones. Doug
Yeah.
Jones was the physical and the voice was, yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Well, still though, I think these days they could probably make it look a bit better than that. Yeah, when you actually look at these issues, it's crazy because it's 3 issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's 2 issues that are actually this story,
Mm-hmm.
because the beginning of 48 and the end of 50 are different stories. It was sort of like the way that they tell the stories back then is they'd finish a story arc and start a new one within the same issue to give almost like the matinee effect. Like back in the 60s and 70s, when you go see a movie, they just run the movie all day. You'd go in and wherever you picked up, you'd watch from there and then stay through the end of it and watch the beginning of it until you've seen the entire movie. So it was that same sort of feel of like, let's put these chapter breaks in the middle of issues instead of the ends of issues, which made it very interesting because we get at the beginning of 48. So of course, a lot of big stuff happening. Galactus gets introduced. First appearance of Silver Surfer. Reed Richards grows stubble. But then there's also the ending to their first big Inhumans arc, where Maximus the Mad creates a negative zone around the Inhumans fortress. So it is like there's so much packed into 20 pages. Each is only 20 pages. And you feel like as you're reading it, that you're reading like 50 pages worth in an issue. It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's also fantastic that like Kirby and Lee were like, we've told our story, so we're not going to overtell it. When it's done, and like we're just moving on. And it's hilarious because the next story is just so not the same. You know, I think it's Johnny goes to school, I think.
Yeah, Johnny goes to school, and it's the setup for this monster, which is the next issue. So there's things moping, and Johnny's going to school. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be 51. So 52 would be the Panther.
Yeah.
So 51's got to have something. Then 51 probably leads right into that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, no, it's crazy. But yeah, so there's just like so much packed in there, so dense. But then also because of the Marvel style, there was kind of a fight within the book itself on who the Silver Surfer would actually be. Because, as you know, later on, Stan Lee kind of takes full shepherding of the Surfer and makes him this pacifist who's trying to find the meaning of life. It's very philosophical. But at the beginning, this Kirby creation is much more a person who has never had like human emotions or really has an understanding of the value of human life. And so he's more like even though he's a full adult man and sounds like one, he is like a child learning new things on the planet. So it's like he sees things just as energy until Alicia Masters kind of gets to his heart and says, hey, there's more to this. There's more. Humans, we have, a purpose, we have faith, we have soul, we have all that sort of stuff. And it's interesting because Kirby really wanted the character to be like that from going forward. Just somebody who was learning new things and was like full of rage. And in fact, the idea was that it was supposed to be such a threat that if Alicia hadn't got through to him, he would have turned her into energy as well and just consumed her. Whereas, of course, if you look at Stan Lee's version of the Surfer throughout the rest of, his time with the character, it's very much more about being a pacifist and everything like that. So for you, which Surfer speaks more to you?
Well, I mean, I still got that from 48, 49, 50. I think when Stan took over, that's the way he kind of wrote him already. Yeah. I mean, like you said, the relationship he ends up having with, was Ben Grimm and her dating at the time?
She was, yeah. They were kind of dating.
Yeah. So when he was with his girlfriend, and he actually, that's when we see like the humanity of humanity is what kind of saves humanity. He's already that guy. And from what I heard of the story, that Kirby was already kind of like at that point. That's not the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it had already been that way. I mean, the groundwork was already there. I mean, either way, nobody's really going to know what went on with those guys and who, like, but I'm happy the way it worked out, because we got some great stories out of it, however it was, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the relationship was like, but it created some great stuff. But I think that was the pinnacle of definitely Stan and Kirby, and in many ways Marvel at the time, other than maybe the Spider-Man, the Ditko stuff, and but for me, I was always, because I'm not a huge Fantastic Four fan, like, by any means. You know, like Reed is Elastic Man, and Elastic Man was always kind of a joke, like, you know, like Fantastic Four, who do you go for? You know, Johnny bullied me in high school, for sure he did, you know, so you're like who do you like? You know, the Fantastic Four, I was like, I never felt for the, you know, the Thing. Like, he's not the Hulk, he's not the same thing, you know, he's got this, he's always, but they did create, like we said, look, in 5 issues, we get the Black Panther, we get, you know, and the Inhumans is huge.
Yeah.
I was never really into the Inhumans either, but Black Bolt and all that, they were the original X-Men, to be honest, because they're like, instead of like a mutant gene, I guess it's an alien gene the Inhumans would have, right?
Yeah, it's the Kree. Yeah.
So we owe a lot to the Fantastic Four, to be honest. It's just, for me, it's just, that wasn't, they've never been my bag.
And it's funny the way you talk about like that, is that I'm kind of that way with Kirby. I like really appreciate Kirby and what he's done, but when I look at his art, and then I look at somebody like John Romita Sr. or even Sal Buscema or something like that, it's like, oh, these guys did the Kirby, like followed the Kirby kind of like layout, but their stuff looked better to me, you know? And I know that's a big faux pas to say, but yeah. So the way you say about how, you know, you were into the Surfer, but you weren't really into the Fantastic Four, but you appreciate all that the Fantastic Four brought us. I feel the same way about Kirby.
Yeah.
But
And Reed,
enough, if I see a Kirby, I know it's a Kirby.
Yeah.
With the other guys, I can appreciate the art, the Buscema's, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to say my eyes that keen that I would know. Oh, okay. For sure, that is. There's some panels for sure, you know.
Yeah.
But Kirby, almost immediately, I just, you know, I can tell right away.
The one page where you see like the kind of like earth devouring device for the first time, and it's like really sharp, and it almost looks like this is in a completely different book, and then you go back into sort of regular Fantastic Four look. Like, that's where you can see sort of a shift happening even.
Right, yeah, because that was part of, like, Kirby was the first guy to do paste ups, where it's like he'd take his board and then he'd take photo references, put them on, paste them onto the board themselves, augment them, and draw around them. And so that's why that particular shot looks so different from everything else, because half of it's like an augmented photo. And like nobody was doing that before him. So like, yes, like as I said, the stuff that he brought to the table, I can appreciate. I don't know. The faces look very doughy to me. That's what it always comes down to.
I like that the thighs are thick, though. It makes me feel, you know, representation matters. So that's great. But yeah, Reed, and we've talked about this before on just our regular episodes. Reed and Professor X, they're the ultimate bad dads. Like, they're just like controlling and kind of like judgy and don't listen when you're talking, and they're kind of dicks. So yeah.
Oh man, but okay. Well, Petula, since you are always pointing out the attire of different characters. Of course, Galactus, when we think of Galactus, we think of the purple and blue. But in these books, you know, because it's still the development of the character, when we first see him, he's green and red. And throughout the entire few books, even when he's purple and red, he's got those kind of like Roman centurion shorts
those
on.
Those boots though work like just in time for, you know, we're recording this end of Pride Month, but I was like, those boots would have been great at the parade if we'd had one this year.
Today, actually.
Yeah.
Oh man, but it's just funny to see that he went from short pants. He like Kirby and Lee eventually figured, maybe not the short pants. Let's get rid of those.
Well, if we're talking about looks, I mean, the Watcher is just, I'm sure when they were talking about what to do with the styling of that character and What If with Jeffrey Wright, they're like, yeah, we can't go back to this like weird toga where it's like a little too short. Yeah.
It kind of looks like the Kingpin in a toga. Yeah.
Yeah. Or creepy uncle at a toga party. Like, it's not a good look. That I don't think, I wouldn't even find this character like imposing. I would just be giggling at the outfit. Yeah. I mean, clearly, drugs for some of these looks, I had to be involved. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see Jack being the type to play with the wacky tobacco.
Well, you could see definitely Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Pretty much biting it. And then you can really see the Bible religious part of Jack in this in these books. He literally got the big G here. When we first meet Galactus and the Silver Surfer, you call him a herald. I mean, he's the angel. And it literally, I think it goes from the Watchers before he puts the rocks in the sky. It's the fire. It's like, it's literally like, so you see the big entity with the G who sends in his herald to come first, and it's through the flames of hell. So like, is he a good angel? Is he not? Who knows? And then he's dressed like, Hercules.
Yeah. He also totally. Strong colonizer energy from Galactus. And Silver Surfer is sort of the person who feels bad. It's like, maybe we shouldn't just roll up on these people and like absorb them for their resources. Maybe there's another way. Yeah.
No, totally. One thing that I find interesting is that Galactus is such a big entity, this godlike being, that the Fantastic Four can't really fight him. So there's one point in the story where they just kind of go in the building and, Reed goes and shaves, which I still find hilarious that it's like, if you look at issue 48, beginning of the book, no facial hair, no stubble. Then like 3 pages later, Sue's complaining about his stubble, and it's all there for the next issue where Reed's just sort of like, well, I can't do anything but shave, and Thing takes a bath. And it's sort of like, okay, well, yeah, when the world is about to come to an end and you feel helpless, this is what you decide to do.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think every person who reads that, you will wonder why. I think I liked, to be honest, that he didn't shave for a minute, because I'm kind of like, I'm so not into Reed. He just always has to stick up his ass. That the fact that he at least didn't shave, I'm like, I kind of like at least this side of him I can see, you know what I mean? I kind of like, but I do love the fact that I can only imagine being 14 or 15 years old reading this at that time. And if you're a Fantastic Four fan and you're even reading DC books at the time, the superheroes are unbeatable. Like, you know what I mean? They're fighting Dr. Doom and the Inhumans, but even like you said with Maximus, when Maximus ends the other arc before we get into the trilogy, the Negative Zone, right?
Yeah.
Reed knows what the Negative Zone is.
Yeah.
He says he knows what it is. So, you still feel like, okay, they can fight these people. When Galactus and the Watcher and the Surfer show up, they're so helpless, they shave. There's literally nothing these people can do against this. So it's kind of like, it's not just the Fantastic Four that's in danger. It's literally like all of humanity is in, I mean, the guy consumes planets. It's whatever they were smoking, good stuff.
Yeah. I like that they just nope out of the fight. They just, let's just homer into the hedges. I can't right now. We've all felt like that some days.
Yeah, pretty much, man. But I think the big takeaway from the story though is that it's kind of, you get to see how they'll react in the face of their demise. And there's the helplessness, but then there's also the need to try to, do something, no matter how simplistic it is. Of course, there is the involvement of the Watcher, which kind of is the, the deus ex machina of the whole thing. He sends, Deus Ex Machina. He sends, the torch through another dimension to get the ultimate nullifier. And just the threat of the nullifier gets Galactus to leave. It's never used, all that sort of stuff. There's people that felt like this is when the bloom was coming off the rose. That it's like, oh, they reached their peak because Stan was reusing endings of other stories. He'd already done this in the Fantastic Four, that the Watcher had sent Reed to another dimension to get something as a Deus Ex Machina to stop the threat that they had at the time. And so while it's considered its biggest story, it's also kind of like and this is where the innovation ends. We're going to have some other great moments after this, but this is where things start to slow down, and we're going to rest on some of our laurels. Now, of course, the creation of the Black Panther was still to come, and of course, the heart-wrenching story of The Thing. But then everything after that was kind of business as usual. Like, okay, now we face Dr. Doom again. Now we do this again. Now we go to the cosmos again. Oh, the Inhumans show up again. It was sort of like, this is kind of like the last big hoorah of setting the table of the Fantastic Four for Kirby and Lee.
Well, I mean, like, I didn't even know that the Watcher sent Reed. Like I said, I'm not. Fantastic Four has just never been my jam. I mean,
not my jam either.
To get into it was because I'm so much of a Surfer fan,
and
Galactus fan, that I had to. You gotta jump in. But so it worked because Stan got me out of it.
So to talk about the Surfer and food, because I know you have an interest in that as well. And I love Garde Manger. What do you think from the menu at Garde Manger at any point in time he would actually eat instead of just dissolving into like energy? Because I feel like for me, the jerk crab that I had there once was just ridiculous, messy, but probably one of the best things I've eaten in my life.
Well, he could probably use his cosmic energy to de-shell it. So
it wouldn't end up looking like you've been murdering someone like I did. Yeah.
I'd like to see the Surfer shucking some oysters. That'd be just little cosmic.
Oh my God. Yeah. No stabbing like in the middle of the hands here when you're trying to open them. Yeah.
I've done that, right? I went to the hospital for that. I got one stitch right there.
No way.
You get one stitch for it. It's the worst.
Oh my God.
So deep you have to get a stitch, but at the same time, one stitch, you're waiting.
Well, yeah, why am I here? It's sorry, I didn't mean to bring up like a traumatic event.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, it's just going there is one of like my top 5 when we start leaving the house again and the province again. Like I have plans.
So are you based over here?
I'm in Toronto. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Toronto, but I go to Montreal a lot, and I've gone to Garde Manger almost every time I go there.
Great.
Yeah.
Now let me know.
Yeah. I usually stay either at Nelligan or William Grace, that I'm like stumbling distance, so I can like eat until like I have to like pop a button. And sorry, we're tangenting now. That's
okay. That's okay. I've just been sitting here thinking about, it would be cool if he had a meal at Tim's restaurant, but if the Surfer then used Tim's upcoming hot sauce as well on said meal, that would be a right there.
Well, it doesn't Alicia make some food, right?
She does, yeah. And the Surfer turns it into energy along with the table and basically consumes all of it.
Yeah, it's like, what a waste. That looked like a good meal.
It did look good, yeah.
Yeah, I love that too, that it's like when that story ends, it's Ben being super jealous, and there's a lot of relationships I felt going on in that. Yeah,
because also when the Inhumans are locked away in the negative zone, Johnny is separated from his new love, Crystal.
He's ready to jump in there for love.
And he's been pining for her and all that. And actually, we didn't bring up, there's also, talking about all the things that popped up in issue 48. In issue 50, when Johnny goes to school, it's the first appearance of Wyatt Wingfoot, who's another reoccurring character throughout the history of Fantastic Four. Ends up, I believe, having a relationship with She-Hulk. Yeah, so a lot of deep cuts into the Marvel universe in these 3 issues alone. Definitely.
Yeah, well, you can definitely see the 1966 between Reed and Sue. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, he basically bosses her around, tells her to shut up. It's very much the overbearing husband sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would absolutely adore someone to say, "Have you eaten today?" I
Yeah.
know you've eaten. I'd be like, "Oh my God, thank you." But
Yeah.
I
But
do
not Reed.
understand,
Reed
like,
doesn't give a shit. Yeah.
no, at that point, that's not what that was. But yeah, if anybody's listening, ask me if I've eaten. Care that much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down as a note in case we ever have to do an in-person meeting with you.
Yeah. Oh no, I'd love to go out and eat with you. You'd probably know some great places to go. But yeah, him, Hank Pym, like there's just a bunch of horrible husbands in the Marvel universe, which I almost feel like the artists and the writers were kind of working out their own stuff through their stories and kind of telling on themselves, really. It's like, it's all right there. Instead of therapy, they just, here's my horrible relationship.
That's
But
very
except
interesting
the
take.
guy you want to hate, Johnny's he's ready to die for love.
Yeah, no, totally. He's very much the young lover.
And do you think there was anything, the reason they send him would be biblical in the David Goliath sense of send the young? I don't know. I'm just because the G for me was so obviously.
Yeah, it's like God. Yeah, no, definitely.
There
is, and also G for Goliath as well. That works. That is a definite possibility. It could also be the idea of that in the Bible, it's always young prophets who are called upon to make the ultimate sacrifices, like Jonah and the whale and things like that. So that totally could be a layer in there as well.
Well, and I do love they took a moment, like when he comes back, where he's like, oh, guys, I need a moment. I've seen too much.
Yeah.
It's so heavy. Which is great because I just love that they really show you how powerless these superheroes can be. It must have, that's why I love it so much, because it must have just, as a reader at that time, your mind just be like, what? There's a whole other place and what is happening? And you're already going crazy with Inhumans and you know what I mean? It's just to open up that. And then this new power, the power cosmic, good stuff.
Yeah, no, totally. And I would say though that when scripting this, Stan should have tried to come up with other little animals or big and small metaphors, because he uses the words ant and insect, I think maybe about 60 times over the span of 2 issues. It's like, come up with something else. And then they work in a mosquito once, but it's like, maybe not so many bug references. We get it. He's huge. He's a big guy. Oh man. But hey, overall, it's always fun to read Stan's prose and the way he lays out a thing. But there is another thing that really stood out for me was there's one point where the Watcher tells Reed, you have to come up with a plan. And he goes, we don't need a plan. We need power. And I'm like, wait a second. Does Reed really talk like that regularly? Like, usually, isn't he the plan guy? Why is he saying no plan now? I don't get it. But it's only for a second. And then the next page, he comes up with a plan. So I don't know. He was going through a bit of a midlife crisis on that panel, I think.
He's not shaving. I mean,
that's what it is. You're right. Oh man. But yeah, overall, it's a fun look back at the pinnacle of the Silver Age. And of course, so many things came from it, including the Silver Surfer. And if you get a chance, check out these issues. I know they're available on Marvel Unlimited and Comixology. There are trade versions of it out there. Or if you know a collector and you have a bunch of money, maybe you could buy those issues. Or if you're really nice and you see Tim, you can ask to borrow his. So there you go. I like how Petula's like, no, don't do that.
No, I
That's a hard no.
It's always it's a yes with me if you come over. I break the rules you're not supposed to break.
Oh, geez. Oh,
I don't mind. How can you not smell those books? And
that's
see those
true.
books?
That's the thing. We're readers. We like to hold the books in our hands. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Now, do you do that same rule for people who come over and want to look at the 4, not 3, but 4 Superman Flash races?
Well, how did you can see those back there?
We talked about it the last time I talked to you.
Okay. I got a new one. I got what's new? This was new. This was
you got G.I. Joe, the silent story, silent interlude. That was when I was in college. I went to like 3 different conventions to find a copy of that. That was my holy grail for a bit.
Birthday gift.
That's awesome.
Oh.
And then my good friend Mr. Bo Smith, creator of Winona Earp, sent me this because he waited to tell me that he actually wrote a Star Wars Boba Fett story.
Oh my God.
And he actually created Boba Fett's daughter. And I'm like, I've known you how many years? You tell me this now? I'm like, send me this book. This is the book he sends me in a slab. So, I mean, he's great, but
yeah. You're like, this is really nice gift, but I wanted to read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, though that's some pretty cool finds there. That's some pretty good stuff. Oh man. Well, Tim, I want to thank you for coming on and talking with us and being our first guest for the My Favorite Comics sub-series. It's been fun. It's your energy talking about comics is always a delight, man.
Guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, anytime.
Awesome. And I know you can't say what it is yet, but you do have a comic in the works right now, right? And so people should be looking out for that.
I might have a couple of things on the go.
Very good. Are they both creator owned, or are you actually doing a property for somebody as well?
Creative owned.
Creator owned. Awesome.
Yes. Final answer.
Well, we look forward to that. So definitely keep us in the loop about that, man. And we will spread the word once it is good to go.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tim. It's been great talking with you. For us, though, if you want to check us out, Petula, where can people find you?
At initiative.com, on Twitter at Obesacantavit, OBESACANTAVIT, and here with you.
And of course, you can check out everything I do at geekhardshow.com. Follow me on Twitter at geekhard. Follow this very show on Facebook at Back Issue Bloodbath. And of course, if you like what we do here, please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/geekhard. And subscribe to us on wherever you catch your pods, be it the Apple Podcast, the Google Podcast, the Spotify, the iTunes, the Stitcher, the Tuned In, wherever you catch your pods. And please leave a 5-star rating review. And then when you do that, go outside, find a man who is carrying fruit. Follow that man to wherever he goes. And then whoever he's talking to, tell them to listen to our show. This has been Back Issue Bloodbath. I've been Andrew Young.
I've been Petula Neal.
Have yourself a good